So after 2 long years of no Marvel movies, we finally got the highly anticipated Black Widow to finally hit theaters this weekend. So how does it hold up against all the other Marvel movies in this franchise? And how does it hold up as a Black Widow movie? Let's head over to the review. Welcome back, film fans. This is Let's Be Real Brad. Today we're going to be talking about the most highly anticipated summer blockbuster of the entire year for most audiences, and that is going to be Black Widow. It is directed by Cate Shortland, and it stars Scarlett Johansson, Florence Pugh, David Harbour, and Rachel Weisz. Black Widow is a movie that people have been clamoring for since this character has been such a fan favorite in the franchise. Considering many of the main superheroes like Iron Man, Thor, the Hulk, Captain America have all gotten their own origin stories and their own sequels as a part of the original Avengers crew, a fan favorite like Black Widow hasn't gotten her own film. Now that I have finally seen the film after watching 16 million trailers and just being super hyped for it, I have to say that this was definitely worth the wait, as it was such an enjoyable, mature, and a very entertaining Marvel film that is different among the rest of the Marvel films. So let's start off with some of the positives here, and we're going to start with the tone of the film. I think the tone of this movie fits the characters' personality so well, as all these characters have gone through some really traumatic and dark experiences. But the other thing that works so much better in this movie is that they took this movie pretty seriously for the most part. Even though it has humor that is sprinkled in every so often, I thought that it worked perfectly with this kind of movie. What I also like that comes with the tone is the style of this movie that's going for, as Scarlett Johansson has described this movie as its being its own kind of film, which is more of a action thriller, James Bond, espionage kind of film. My second positive with the film is the acting. Scarlett Johansson is clearly one of my favorite actresses working today, as she has so much range and she is so good in any other movie that she is in. She dominates this role. But we also have other great cast members such as David Harbour, who plays the Red Guardian, as he was very funny in this movie with his strong Russian accent that he's able to pull off well, as I think he was able to offer many of the great comedic moments that never felt forced or annoying at any point in this movie. Florence Pugh also shows up in this movie, as I think she is excellent after being in films like Midsommar and Little Woman. I also really enjoy Rachel Weisz, as she is a phenomenal actress, as she does a really good job in the role. All of the acting as a whole is really good, especially when you have the scenes between these four characters. I think were the most enjoyable and entertaining scenes. One of my next positives is the humor. The humor in this movie is perfect. The jokes aren't amazing by any means, but I did find this film to be very funny. And I think the little bit of comedy breaks up the tension of being a very serious movie, but it never gets annoying and ever shoved in your face. I do think the writing as a whole is very solid, because one of the best things that this movie is able to do is offer these characters and to be so likable, relatable, and have this nice dynamic between all of them. I also found the music in the film to be very solid. It wasn't the most incredible thing that we've heard in any of these Marvel films, but I do think it added to many of the intense action scenes that this movie was able to offer, and for some of the dramatic moments toward the third act. I also think some of the other technical aspects, like the editing, was very solid, as it should be for all these Marvel films. I also found that the directing by Cate Shortland was very impressive, considering that Cate has only done very small independent film. Now, let's start off with the negatives here, and we're going to start with the cinematography. I really do feel like, along with the cinematography, the way this film is presented just feels like a generic Marvel movie that just goes through the motions. And this could be due to the first time of Cate Shortland working on a big budget movie like this and being able to helmet all together. My second issue with this movie is the pacing. For the most part, I do think the pacing is pretty solid and it moves along quite quickly, as this movie is around 2 hours and 16 minutes and it didn't really feel like it. But there is a middle section of this movie that does drag quite a bit, and it is one of my favorite parts of the film, but it does come off as more like a drama that could really turn people off who want a big budget summer superhero film. But since this movie feels like on its own, they mention so many characters from all the other movies just for the fans to be like, hey, I know that character. There's also one moment at the end of the film that tries to connect itself to Avengers Infinity War that could have been completely cut out of the movie. It felt extremely unnecessary, and it probably wouldn't have changed my emotion or feeling to this movie or any new information I would have gotten. My fourth negative with this movie is that I think there could have been a lot more they did with the story. As much as I enjoy this movie and the story they took it, I did feel like at the end of the movie that there was so much more they could have done with the characters, the story, as the bigger storyline of this movie of what it's really about does feel like it's in the back burner a lot. But I think as a whole, it could have been utilized a lot better, feel a lot more important that it is than just feeling like it's in the sideline, like a James Bond film almost. And one of my last negatives that could be a little bit controversial is the action scenes. The action scenes are done in a very competent and decent way, but I do feel like the action scenes could have been a lot better, and there could have been a little bit more creative ways they use the action scenes, as it felt like all the punching and kicking and throwing this and throwing that were just so generic, and they didn't do anything that was super memorable or creative. It just could be to Kate Shorthand not being very well experienced with these big budget action films, so I do give a little bit of passing credit there. But for the people who love these superhero action films, you may be a little bit more disappointed. So overall, guys, this movie is entertaining, fun, has great writing, great jokes, and is a movie that is going to satisfy every single fan. I am going to give Black Widow a 7 out of 10. Before you check out the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, drop a like if you want to, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a new video.